Okay, so I'm Jackie, as you're well aware by now. And I just want to take you on a journey, share a little bit of a journey that I took with a group of family carers, where I investigated the negative effects of a caring role on family carers. And then I took them through a mindfulness, compassion and QiGong course, and to see the impact that that had on them before the course and after the course. So in this presentation I'm going to tell you a bit of why I chose family carers, and I'm going to take you about how I did it, what I did, and then a concluding slide as to the conclusions of my research. So, first of all, why family carers? Well, in the UK there are 7 million unpaid family carers. So I just let that figure drop with you for a moment. 7 million unpaid family carers. And they represent an economic contribution of £312 billion per annum. Okay, that's the impact that they're having of this caring role. And there was a study in 2012 by the charity Carers UK, and they did some research across 3,500 family carers, and they found that 91% of them were suffering from stress, 84% of them were suffering from mental illness and physical illness, and 58% of them were suffering from depression. So they started to look at the impact. Now, at the beginning of the course, or at the beginning of my studies, I looked into compassion fatigue across family carers. So when you look at compassion fatigue in studies related to compassion fatigue and family carers, going back to the end of World War I, there are hundreds of studies on professional carers and the impact of compassion fatigue. When I looked into how many studies have been done linking compassion fatigue with family carers, do you know how many I found? 2. And yet these guys are doing a very intense caring role, the same as a professional carer, only they have this added an emotion in that it's their loved one that is actually suffering. So why this empathic distress? So empathy was really key and pivotal to this study, because when we suffer with somebody, so that means we're feeling the pain too, this actually activates our own pain centre in the brain, and this causes isolation, stress and ill health. So we're actually saying, and I had a sense of this when I was caring for my daughter when she was a teenager. It was, I want you to get better, so I feel better. Now there's a slight twist to this, and it's very subtle, that if we can say it's your pain and accept that somebody is suffering, and say, well actually it's your pain, it's not my pain, I'm not taking your pain on board, however I send you love and compassion and I support you, something very radical happens in the brain and the pain centre closes down. It opens up our soothing system and induces oxytocin into the system, and this helps increase our positive thoughts and love. It helps us be more pro-social, and it induces well-being and it reduces stress. But it's very subtle. So I took these carers, I only found this out 1 week before I did the course, so I integrated it into the course. And then you may wonder why I added compassion and QiGong into my course. So I started with the mindfulness-based living course. I extended it for 10 weeks, and as you all know, there's plenty of evidence that is saying that mindfulness reduces stress and anxiety. There's plenty of evidence now emerging that compassion induces these positive thoughts and feelings of love. And QiGong is something I teach, and there's evidence, scientific evidence, that says it produces serotonin and dopamine in our bodies instantly, which has an instant calming effect. So this is something I use with the carers so I could calm them down. They're a very vulnerable group, and by using movement, I knew I was able to help reduce their stress so they were able to cope with the sessions better. So how did I do this? Well, I used a mixed method study, and I wanted to find out if their stress reduced and their self-compassion increased over this time and their overall well-being. So I used 4 questionnaires. But I felt for me that wasn't enough, because I wanted to understand what was really going on for them. It's okay measuring these, but it was for me the qualitative data that was going to be more important. I wanted to know their stories, I wanted to know how they felt, I wanted to understand their experiences. And so I used focus groups, personal interviews, and also I observed them on a weekly basis and documented what I noticed, overheard conversations, their responses during inquiry. And I found that after a while they started bringing poems to the group to share with each other. One of them I read this morning as part of the Mindful Hero session. And also they started to go to classes, and some of them brought their artwork to say that this was how they were able to express themselves. So this is how I did it. After I had a lot of data, I had too much data, but what I started to do was collect words and phrases that were meaningful, and then I themed those words. So here are the words. So first of all, we have the cloud of suffering from empathic distress. And I say empathic distress because Ricardo Singer, a neuroscientist, she renamed compassion fatigue as empathic distress fatigue. And she said you can't get tired of compassion, but you can get tired of a negative response to empathy. Like I said, I feel you're in pain, I'm in pain too. So that's a negative empathic response. So you can see here the words that they used. They felt isolated, stressed, some of them had breakdowns, they were tired, no joy in life, one said. Anxiety, angry, guilty. And when the themes emerged from all these words, I found that they were suffering from not only the empathic distress fatigue, they were also suffering from grief, guilt, and role engulfment, and that means total loss of self in this role. So their sense of self had kind of gone. And after the course, these are the words, the transformation of the butterfly. They became more mindful, happier, they found their voice, they found their sense of self. And the contributing factors to that were self-compassion, self-confidence, self-esteem, and social behaviour. Now, the quantitative data helps support this because it showed me that their stress had reduced by 35% and their self-compassion had increased by 32%. So they were the contributing factors from the quantitative data. So to conclude, the study that I used contributed to theory, practice and research. So for the theory, it revealed from my study that carers suffered from a negative response to their caring role. Scientific research is saying that actually it's not compassion fatigue, it's empathic distress fatigue, and that they suffer from this guilt and role engulfment as well. So the practice was over 10 weeks. So I taught them a weekly QiGong sequence that would help reduce their stress, which they really loved. And contribution to research was that overall there were positive effects from this, and also that the qualitative data was really important. And why this is important, because some of the phrases that came out was they felt mindfulness was a gift, that it was transformative. And one lady said to me that it had transformed the relationship with her husband, who she was caring for. She said they'd turned the clock back 20 years and fallen in love again. And that they'd seen a change in each other. And another lady who was caring for her son said she couldn't accept her son was ill. And the guilt and grief she found around that. And she said that after the course, she was able to have a different relationship with her son, and her whole experience, the guilt had gone, and she had a whole new experience of her son. So these were some of the stories that I was able to capture as part of this data. So I'm eternally grateful for these carers, because they helped me transform too. I learned a lot from them as I lived and breathed their stories. And I'm grateful to you too for listening. Thank you.